I'm Trevor Alonzo. For Christmas, we have a special treat for you today, as this is a Christmas crossover with Lee Priest from SciFirst Movie Talk YouTube channel. We are going to review the movie Scrooged here, and a review of Elf on his channel. The link will be down below in the description. So without any further ado, here is my review of Scrooged, the 1980s modern take on the Charles Dickens classic A Christmas Carol. Starring Bill Murray as Frank Cross, this movie's version of Ebenezer Scrooge, and Karen Allen as Claire Phillips, this movie's version of Belle. This version has a TV president by the name of Frank, trying to produce a live broadcast of Scrooge, basically A Christmas Carol. We see that Frank himself is a Scrooge. He doesn't treat others well, and he hates Christmas. He is visited by a dead colleague and warned to change his ways, and that he himself will be visited by the three ghosts of Christmas. For the most part, this follows A Christmas Carol, and what I mean by that is sort of the frame of it. I first started watching this when I was a kid, when it came out on HBO, mainly because Bill Murray was in Ghostbusters, and honestly, because there's ghosts in this. I do enjoy the movie on its own. Funny enough, I found out in some countries, the movie was renamed The Ghost Revenge to try and make more money off of the fact that Bill Murray was in Ghostbusters. I like how this movie uses the character types of the book. They don't try to force all of the wording from the book into the modern version. They do keep the heart and the ideas of the book in this movie. I do like the look and the feel of this movie, and how it changes for different periods. Brighter colors are used when Frank is younger and nicer. Cold and dark colors are used when he is mean. They do take it to extremes whenever it's the future. They do use the live broadcast to their advantage for more Christmas cheer. The effects in this movie I thought were good. The look of the Ghost of Christmas Future is terrifying. This is directed by the late Richard Donner of Superman and Lethal Weapon fame. He did a good job of creating a Christmas classic. You could say that he has this as his Christmas movie, and The Omen as his Halloween movie. You can tell he does his usual way of making shots look good on film. Everyone does do a good job of acting in this movie. Bill Murray really does deliver a great performance, even though I heard he didn't really like it as much as everyone else. He did not get along with the director. Bill Murray said that he was asked to be louder and louder. He would later say the movie could have been better, and I think the comedy in this is good. Bill Murray still brings his comedy A-game, even though he wasn't into it. This movie is full of cameos, from Lee Majors to Mary Lou Retton, because of all the TV special parodies. One of which, The Night the Reindeer Died, I wish was a real action movie. Imagine watching that back to back with Die Hard. The music by Danny Elfman is great. You can definitely tell it's his music right away. He has a certain sound to his music, as well as Al Green and Annie Lennox's version of Put a Little Love in Your Heart, which has kind of become a Christmas song. I've seen VH1 play it during Christmas videos, and have heard it on radio stations that play nothing but Christmas music. I'm not going to give spoilers. Knowing it follows A Christmas Carol, you can guess what happens. That still doesn't spoil the movie. A decade ago, they announced a Blu-ray with special features and a director's commentary. It was going to be called the You'll Love It Edition. For unknown reasons, it was not released. Since Richard Donner has passed away, I hope they decide to change it and release it next year. Every year I have tried to look to see if it was released. So far, nothing. So let's start the hashtag. Released a You'll Love It Edition. This is one of my go-to Christmas movies. I love watching it for the season, so it's no surprise I give this a 10 out of 10 candy canes. If you are a Bill Murray fan, you'll love this. If you are a Ghostbusters fan, you'll love this. You'll definitely love his comedy in this. Now I will hand this over to Lee from the YouTube channel SciFirst Movie Talk. Again, we are reviewing Elf on his YouTube channel. The link is down below in the description. I hope you will check it out. So Lee, take it away.
So, Scrooged certainly provides for an alternative take on the original Dickens classic, whilst at its core retaining everything and really the values that make that story great, and always, regardless of its setting or the adaptation to which it refers, being so poignant in presenting such a strong message of goodwill, kindness and sharing. Not just at Christmas, of course, but bringing Christmas into our hearts every day. This has been one of my alternative Christmas staples since that very first viewing. It's kind of that quirky 80s comedy, you know, that captures the essence of the era. It has that distinct energy many of the, you know, these 80s comedies bring, with only like the sass and attitude only Murray could actually provide. I love the kind of the darker, the greyer edge that this movie gives to the classic Dickens tale. Much more Dickensian than most even, you know? And indeed, Murray provides an excellent stand-in for a more modern day, well, 80s at the very least, kind of Scrooge, you know? His sarcastic and churlish attitude suits the classic creepy and malevolent character of Scrooge to a T. His unique brand of backchat gives his version of Scrooge, the often angry and short-tempered and self-conceited TV executive Frank Cross, an edge that's kind of, you know, both absolutely hilarious and twisted at the same time, which makes his comeuppance, as he's visited by the trio of Christmas ghosts, especially sweet. I think the message that this film gives is absolutely timeless. And I mean, you know, not just because of the classic story from which it's derived, of course, but indeed this movie in particular, although set in the 80s, many of the things cited in this movie, especially Frank's kind of production values, still seem that they could be speaking to some of today's setups, you know? So much of it remains relevant, and I think that's why I've kind of continued to love it so much over the years. It's got the 80s style and swagger in bounds, you know? Much like many of Murray's other starring roles, it is sheer entertainment value, and that kind of outweighs any of its misgivings, which, to be fair, are very few. Whatever the creators and those involved in the movie did think of it, you know? In the end, what they actually made was genius and a total crowd pleaser, you know? It certainly doesn't have that kind of musty smell much of the other Dickens adaptations certainly have. Not kind of setting the story in Victorian England, I think, was certainly a refreshing change, and pretty much an inspired choice, I think, for this. It really does provide a fairly decent setting, does, 1980s New York. Certainly made it a lot easier for the audience to kind of connect and find similarities with many of the characters. I think it's New York anyway. The first thing is that, you know, that hits you in this movie is the haunting and the playful soundtrack by Danny Elfman. In my opinion, not enough of it was kind of made throughout the film. But then I am a fan of his work through and through. Distinctly recognisable though, and instantly captivating, it has notes very reminiscent of his scores from both Batman Returns and Beetlejuice, which do give it a more familiar overture, but ultimately still one which plays very well to this kind of darker, occult kind of vibe, yet, you know, inventive and kind of quick-witted tones of the movie, easily acting as a bridge for Frank's transformation. It also has a very, very good supporting cast, from Karen Allen, Alfred Woodard, and Carol Kane, to John Glover, Bobcat Goldthwait, who is absolutely spot on, absolutely awesome, as a bumbling kind of Bob Cratchit type, may I add. You know, together with a whole host of cameos from many of the 80s celebrities, coming kind of thick and fast, which of course really does add to the fun of this movie. Indeed, the cast, the ghosts, past, present and future, they are especially such a treat to watch. The level of detail, both in the performance and presentation, is absolutely superb. I mean, past and present are absolutely simply nuts. Future, simply terrifying. But let's just say at least that they do have some very unorthodox methods. They work though. And that's another thing. For as festive as this movie actually ends up being, parts of it are as scary as they come. Again, for a Christmas movie. I mean, I'm not saying that it's an out-and-out horror film, you know? But it's certainly got that kind of spooky aesthetic that a film like this needs. Definitely kind of a macabre edge at times. I would suggest it's certainly one of the more scary adaptations of the story that I've seen. You know, and considering these adaptations do have quite a dark tone in them in the first place, this one, I think, hits the nail on the head very well. But indeed, the effects and the set design are absolutely fantastic and hold up incredibly well to this day. The costumes and the makeup really do set the tone for each of these ghosts, kind of mirroring their vibrant and indeed sometimes sombre personalities. It doesn't miss a beat, and it gets straight into the flow of kind of this dark humour that this film kind of excels at, with a kind of this perfect mix of slapstick and situational comedy. And indeed, some fantastic running gags that just keep coming back and back through the film. Must admit, I am still trying to find copies of those festive favourites, The Night the Reindeer Died and Bob Goulet's Old-Fashioned Cajun Christmas. They look like they would have been an absolute staple on many people's Christmas watch list. Just haven't been able to find them yet. Ultimately, this is a great take on the classic Dickens tale with a real alternative twist, whilst retaining the heart and, the heartwarming and heartfelt sentiment core of the story. A wonderfully classic story, retold in an offbeat but very endearing and charming way with that kind of true Murray touch. So, I would just like to say a massive thank you to Trevor for suggesting this collab and indeed having me on his channel. It has been absolutely fantastic to work with Trevor once again and revisit this superb alternative Christmas classic, definitely getting me into that festive spirit.